it's the mental pain of going, why am I like this? Why can't I eat like a normal person? Why do I have to eat that much food, and why don't I have control over it? I can't do this. And I just froze. And I was staring at this phone and I just started crying. And I knew then, whatever was happening, it wasn't going to be good. I can't see any point in life, and why am I even here? So I can just imagine my mum hearing those words. I can just imagine how much it broke her heart for her little girl. The only way we're going to stick to our lifestyle changes is if we find a way that it works for us. It's so much more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. We really are, all of us, without exception.
Hello and welcome to the Si5 Improvement podcast, where we bring to you high performance and success stories from everyday people, along with self-improvement and healthy living advice from myself, the host, Harry Edward Bassant, because I truly believe that all of us have got advice to give and experiences to share for the listeners of the podcast to take away and apply. Because when we improve ourselves, that is when we improve our life. Welcome to the Si5 Improvement podcast. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Si5 Improvement podcast, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening over on Spotify and Apple. Welcome, and we have another guest on the podcast for you today. For anybody who wants some advice about how to regain control of your eating habits, your nutrition, anyone struggling to lose weight, we've got a very inspirational guest on today who's going to talk and give you some advice just on that. So welcoming Lina from Lina Gets Lina over on Instagram, and the clue's in the name there really. Lina Gets Lina. She's on Instagram. She's inspiring other people with her weight loss journey, with regaining control of her food, and giving great advice. And I mean this as well generally, because I see what she's posting, and there's so much information out there with regards to nutrition, and everyone's got different opinions, but Lina's advice is something that I really agree with. So it's even more of a reason I wanted her to come on this podcast. So Lina, thank you for coming on today. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me. What an honour.
Well, it's an honour to have you on.
Thank you.
How are you today?
I'm really good, thank you. I'm very good. How are you?
Great. Very good, thanks. Like I just said, a little bit tired because it was a busy evening for me yesterday on the old closure of my program, Transform 180. So I stayed up late, got some late sign-ups in. So yeah, but I'm buzzing from that. So yeah, thanks for asking.
Very good.
Let's start by asking. We were talking about food today, so let's start by asking, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
I had some yogurt and fruit, and I had some eggs on toast. You know, all about them protein goals.
Yeah. So eggs, protein, high protein in eggs. Obviously some carbs with the eggs, and some yogurt and some fruit, which is good. The sugar in fruit it doesn't spike our sugar levels. It's got quite a low glycemic index. So starting your day with some berries is good, and some fruit, and mixing that with the yogurt clothes that as well. Great mixture, great balanced breakfast, to be fair.
Thank you.
But you're someone who struggled with a food disorder when you were younger. What was that?
So at the age of 16, I signed up for a bodybuilding gym. It wasn't a big commercial gym. It was like a gym in a basement that wasn't fancy, but it had all the equipment that obviously the bodybuilders needed. But everyone was welcome there. It wasn't just for bodybuilders. And I fell in love with weight training. That was it. I was hooked. I loved it so much. I loved how it made me feel. I loved the atmosphere at that gym, and it was just full of amazing and incredible people. And I enjoyed it so much that I said to my coach at the time, I said, look, I'd love to take this further and start proper training so I could possibly look into going into competitions and stuff, because I was that hooked on it and I enjoyed it so much. And because my coach became quite a good friend, he said to me, look, Lina, he goes, you know, I admire you for everything you do and everything else, but he goes, oh, I'll have to be really honest with you and tell you that your body shape is not meant for bodybuilding. But by that, he meant that I wasn't petite enough. And at the age of 16, hearing those words, although I played it down and I said, yeah, it's fine, whatever, it doesn't matter. I'll just carry on training for the fun of it. It cut deep. It really cut deep. And I, for whatever reason, I decided to go on this eating plan, which I think that was where all my issues around food started forming. So it was an eating plan called cabbage soup diet. So it's 2 weeks of your main meal being the said cabbage soup, which, just saying that out loud, that sounds so sad. And obviously you'd be eating other meals, but really small meals, or, you know, snacks and stuff. So very calorie restricted diet in order to lose as much fat as possible in a very short space of time. So I did that, and I remember, I think that's where the binging urges started coming through, because I thought at the end of this diet, all I could think about was smashing a box of donuts. That's all I could think about. It wasn't even how much weight am I going to lose, or how much it will change my body shape or anything like that. All I could think about was donuts. And I think that's where the food restriction and then binging, that's where the roots started forming. But my binge eating disorder didn't really materialise until, I'd say, my early 20s. So at the age of 19, I've started working in a warehouse, and it was a really busy picking and packing job. So you had to run from one end of the warehouse to the other. And at the time, I wasn't even overweight, but the constant running around, I've started losing weight because of how active I was in that job. And obviously with most jobs, there comes stress. And at the age of 19, I didn't really know how to handle it. So I turned to coffee and smoking. So coffee to give me energy, smoking to release stress, which I thought that was, you know, that was what I had to do to deal with it. And also I've kind of went from eating proper meals and trying to fuel my body, I went to hardly eating anything. So my eating would look like picking at sweets just to keep my energy levels up. Or if there was a meal time where I would sit down and eat with the family and friends, I'd just pick at the plate just to make it look like I was eating. And like I say, because I wasn't overweight at the time, the amount of weight I lost in about 6 months, I looked terrible. Like, I didn't realise how bad I looked until my boyfriend's at a time mum said to my mum, she went, your daughter doesn't look right. Whether she's doing it on purpose or it's accidental, she goes, we need to do something about it, because that's not right. If she doesn't start eating properly, you know, we're gonna have big problems on our hands.
So you were reducing your food and you were getting thinner. Is that why they were concerned?
Yeah, because I was probably the thinnest I've ever been in my life. And obviously with my build, with my broad shoulders, it looks, the trouble is I don't have photos to go back to it and compare it what I looked then, but I do remember the concern from my family and friends saying, you know, maybe you need a different job or you need to do something different and start eating properly and looking after yourself properly. And around that time, so I've never admitted that there was an issue. I kind of just played it down and I said to my family, look, I'm fine. I don't have any health issues. And they said, yeah, but if you look at you, you'd think that you're severely malnourished. But around that time as well, so I went from the busy picking and packing shop floor job. I was offered a job in the office at the same company. And obviously with change of activity and the job changing completely, where I was sitting down all day or most of the day, and then there came office drama, office gossip, office snacks and everything that comes with it. So in the space of probably another 6 months, I went from hardly eating and surviving on coffee, cigarettes and sweets, I went to overeating quite badly. Again, because I was in a different environment and it was an office job now instead of a warehouse job. So my food restriction went completely the opposite way. And that's where my binges started. So not just overeating, it was eating as much food as possible in quite a short space of time. And then obviously after that comes regret. It's almost like you get possessed by whatever it is, and then you just eat as much food as you can, and then you kind of wake up and go, what have I done? Because it's not only the physical pain of overeating, it's the mental pain of going, why am I like this? Why can't I eat like a normal person? Why do I have to eat that much food, and why don't I have control over it? So it went from, as I mentioned to you before, it went from one extreme end to another in a very short space of time.
Yeah.
But another reason why I wanted to come on this podcast is to say to people that the issues you have with food or with anything in life, it doesn't define you, and you can overcome pretty much everything or anything that life throws at you, whether it's binges or whatever it is in life that people struggle with. You know, we're so much more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. We really are, all of us, without exception.
And we'll talk about how you manage to regain control of your food, because this is the thing, isn't it? Like, people can struggle and they feel like they're trapped and they don't know how to come out of it. So it's going to be really great to find out now how you've regained. Just before we do, there's, we go back to where you said about how you restricted your food like quite dramatically on that cabbage soup diet, and you really restricted things and went to an extreme to try and get the weight off. And it's really a case, isn't it? Because you go from one extreme to the other. You've gone from that severe dieting, and then you've gone to the binge eating because of that severe restriction. And let's be real. When you lose weight, you do have to restrict a little bit, because you have to put yourself into a calorie deficit, and you have to make your body burn energy. So there has to be a slight restriction, but it's getting that restriction, and just in that fine sort of area of you're going to lose weight, you're restricting yourself, but it's not some dramatic restriction that's going to cause this massive rebound effects afterwards. And there's a lot of people that rebound, they go on these severe diets, then they rebound afterwards. I've done it myself. Do you know what I mean? I've done it myself, and I've learned that it's really a lifestyle You know, healthy eating, it should be a lifestyle change for the long term. How do we want to eat long term, rather than thinking, I need to lose all this weight before my holiday, you know, or I need to lose all this weight before. I think if we start implementing it as a lifestyle, I think that's when we start gaining control a little bit, and it doesn't become this yo-yo effect.
Absolutely, and it's accepting the fact that if you want long-term results, it's gonna take a long time to achieve it. It's not about crash diets. It's never been about crash diets. It's always been about respecting your body and treating your body the way it deserves to be treated. It's not about punishing our bodies. It never has been. It's just, for whatever reason, the message that you get from fitness and diet industries, unfortunately, quick results, 8, 12-week plans that, if you want to achieve long-term results, it's gonna have to become a lifestyle change. It's not about 8 or 12 weeks. It's gonna have to be forever.
Yeah. Joe, I remember when I was in my early 20s and I was trying to lose weight, and I used to say to my dad or to friends, I'm going to go to the gym every single day for a week, and I'm only going to eat one stir fry a day for 1 week. You watch. I'll lose a whole stir in a week. And I did. Like, I'd be on the treadmill every day. I'd eat all these stir fries, and I'd lose a whole stir in a week. And people go, how the heck have you done that? But what did I do the week after that? Completely gave up. My body was broken from the workouts. I was absolutely starving. Takeaway curries, beers, and I gained all that stone all back on again, probably in about 4 days. And I just got stuck on that cycle for ages. And then I started to think to myself, well, I need to go back to the gym again then and do it again. And I used to think it was just my lack of mental toughness. Like I just needed to make sure I did it every week. But I was punishing myself, and it wasn't a sustainable way of losing that weight or to gain my fitness. So it is definitely 100% a lifestyle. And it's funny as well how you say there was two things that you turned to, were two emotional triggers that you turned to: coffee and sugar when you were at your work in the warehouse, and you turned to cigarettes on the other hand. And they're in two different categories. The cigarettes were because you were stressed, and the sugar and the coffee was because you needed energy. Two things that everybody is struggling with in life at the moment is I don't believe we're getting enough sleep, and we're lacking energy in the day. So I feel like, the demands that life is putting on us now, it's causing us to have to set the alarm early, get up, get to work, be on our feet all day long, pressures of work, and it's draining our energy, it's increasing our stress levels, and we're turning to sugar, more caffeine, and then we're getting sugar crashes, caffeine crashes, then our energy is becoming lower. We turn to then cigarettes to reduce our stress, and it is a trap. It is a big, big trap.
Absolutely.
So these are the traps that people can get into, and it's so easily done. Then many people listening, probably watching right now, that are in these cycles, they don't know how to regain control, and they might be that they're turning to alcohol instead of cigarettes. It will be something that they're in a rut with. So how did you finally manage to regain control of your relationship with food?
So again, there's still quite a few bits of my story that would add to the whole picture. So I didn't start properly regaining my idea of what health and fitness should look like up until a couple of years ago, because where we finished my story, where I went from potentially anorexic to then binge eating disorder, there were a few things that happened in my life that again had a big impact on how I am as a person these days. So again, in my early 20s, I was in a relationship with someone who potentially wasn't right for me, and I was in a relationship with him for 8 years. And in that time, we bought a house together. There were job changes, and there was a lot going on. And again, the job stress, the work-related stress was featuring quite heavily in how I was approaching food, because if I had a bad day at work, I'd binge, and the binges were getting out of control, and it was a vicious cycle. And unfortunately, in 2017, after a particularly stressful time at work where the systems were changing and there was a lot of change that none of us in the team knew how to deal with. Whilst I had all the other personal drama going on in the background, stuff at work wasn't going very well. And I think there's only so long you can carry on before your body goes, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
So in May 2017, I remember this day so clearly. I was sat at my desk at work and the phone went off. So I had to answer that phone call. But I just froze and I was watching the phone, the lights flashing on it. And I sat there with the headset in my hand going, I can't do this anymore. Like, I cannot physically answer that phone call or do anything else, whether it's on the screen, whether it's answering the phone call. I can't do this. And I just froze. And I was staring at this phone and I just started crying. And I knew then, whatever was happening, it wasn't going to be good. So that day I actually ended up walking out of my job and thinking, oh, it was the right thing to do, because obviously my body's sending me signals where if it's going in a complete meltdown and breakdown and it doesn't want to carry on. So I went home that day thinking, I walked out of this toxic job that's surely got to be the best thing I ever could have done for my mental health. But unfortunately it wasn't, because then I just spiraled into really, really dark depression. I couldn't work, but I had to. So I was kind of doing like little temp jobs with agencies and stuff, but I couldn't do anything. I couldn't. And I got to the point where I didn't want to be here anymore. Like, I spent about 2 weeks Googling of ways of ending my life, essentially. Luckily, the suicide attempt that I had was unsuccessful. But the phone call I had to make to my mum afterwards and telling my mum that I didn't want to be here anymore because I couldn't see, I had no job, I had no interest in life, everything was just getting me down, and I was so low. I said to her, Mum, I'm really sorry, but I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I'm done. Like, I can't see any point in life, and why am I even here? So I can just imagine my mum hearing those words. I can just imagine how much it broke her heart for her little girl, essentially, to say, Mum, I don't know why you brought me to this life. It's not doing it for me. I can't stand it. So my mum begged me to go and get help, which I did eventually. But I had a couple of weeks where I was just processing the fact that I got to that point where I didn't see any point in life. And it was quite a strange coincidence as well, because around that time, I don't know if you know a band called Linkin Park, but their frontman, Chester Bennington, committed a suicide. So that would have been about 10 days after my failed suicide attempt.
Right.
So when they released the song One More Light, and I listened to that song, I was like, oh my God, this is a person who I don't know personally. I just admired him for his music. this is the person who had it sounds really horrible, but he successfully ended his life. And I was so heartbroken, and I was like, thank goodness I didn't go through it, because I could just imagine the mental image of my mum finding out that I wasn't here anymore. That kind of went, Lina, you got to sort yourself out. You got to sort yourself out. You cannot put your mum or any of your loved ones through this. It doesn't matter how hard. So, I had to make massive changes to go from someone who didn't want to be here anymore to then start picking myself up and, putting myself first and, looking after myself properly. So I did give in and went and saw my GP, and my GP was brilliant. And although I didn't want to, I did agree to go on antidepressants, which I didn't last on it very long. But again, it was that, whether it gave me a bit of a kick to start making life changes or whatever it was, that rock bottom which I hit when I realised that I had enough and I didn't want to be here anymore. From that moment onwards, even though it took me a little while to get back on my feet and start feeling little glimmers of hope, that was when I'd say that's when my journey started properly of, the self-improvement and putting yourself first and looking after yourself and finding ways of looking after your mental and physical health. So, yeah, that was in 2017. And then I managed to find myself a job, which wasn't ideal, but I had some good people around me. So I started picking myself up, and in 2018, I got my little dog Molly. She was only 6 months old when I first got her in July 2018. So she was a crazy puppy who got rehomed went from one home to another. And because of Molly and how busy she kept me, I started forgetting to take my antidepressant pills. Genuinely, because she was a little whirlwind that just turned my life upside down, and I fully embraced the dog mum life. And when I had a checkup with my GP a couple of weeks later, I said to her, I've got something to tell you. And she goes, you're going to tell me that you came off your pills, weren't you? And I went, yeah, but it was by a complete accident. I said, because I've got this little creature in my house that drives me absolutely insane, but at the same time is the best antidepressant I ever could have asked for. And she doesn't come with any side effects other than, maybe a couple of chewed up remotes or household objects that can easily be replaced. So, Molly, as little as she is, she has played a big part in me getting better and finding something to look after and put my heart and soul into. And that was probably what I needed. I needed a purpose, and she was my purpose and still is my purpose, because, at the end of the day, she is my best friend. She might be a dog to some people, but she's my best mate. And then other big events followed after Molly's arrival. So in early 2019, I've ended my 8-year-long relationship with a man that definitely wasn't right for me. We put the house on the market and I moved away. Me and Molly found a random house in a random town that I didn't know anything about, but obviously it's with rental markets, it's quite difficult to find properties where pets are allowed. So I was lucky enough to find a nice little house for us and moved away and essentially started a new life together, just me and her. And
Just
not long.
Just
Yeah.
cutting in there, Lina. I just want to cut in there before you go any further, because I'm not someone that I can usually handle quite a lot. I'm not someone that cries or anything. I'm sort of. It takes a lot for me to kind of get emotional, but this is the first interview I've had on a podcast where I just started welling up. I literally just started having tears in my eyes when you were talking about, your depression, and when you had to leave your work and you were thinking of, you tried to kill yourself. Like, literally, I almost like had a tear coming down my. That's the first time ever. So it's such an emotional thing. Do you know what? I know the listeners who are going to be listening to this, like, you just gripped them with your story there, like 100%. And it's so interesting as well how you then committed. Like, I always talk about 100% commitment. And it sort of seemed like you found that commitment to say, like when you said, I have to sort myself out now. I can't, the thought of your mum having to see you if you did do anything like that, you just suddenly felt like you needed to commit 100%. And I always talk about that. I feel it's so important that when, it gets, and it's funny because some things just trigger that in us. And maybe some of us have to wait for that point, that we just have to feel like, do you know what? I'm now ready to commit now. I'm ready to do something, to take big action. And the second thing I just thought as well is the comfort that you found in your pet, in your dog, because I've actually not heard that before. I've never heard, like, I know pets are really good for mental health. We saw it in the lockdown in 2020 where people were, I think landlords were now being prompted to let their tenants have animals in the house because they realised how beneficial it is for mental health. I got my cat, and I think there's a chemical that the body produces, talking about the science, which is it oxytocin?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you can get that through human connection and human touch, but you can also get that, I think, from animals as well. And oxytocin is a chemical a little bit like dopamine, and the endorphins that we get from exercising. And I say that my antidepressant is exercise because it releases endorphins. But your dog provides you that sort of that comfort, but also purpose. Like you said, you've got a purpose into looking after that dog.
Yeah.
And I always say purpose is massive. So the three things there really, I asked the question, how did you regain control? I just want the listeners and the viewers to actually understand these three key points about how you did regain control. You committed 100% to big action that you needed to take. You've got the science into giving yourself release of these good chemicals that are then going to stop you feeling like you need to turn to those things such as cigarettes or food, because you've now got that replacement of a happy feeling. So you're less likely to want to self-soothe because you're actually now feeling a lot more comforted and happy. And then you've got purpose. If you've got something to wake up for in the morning, like, you've got those three things. And for anyone listening and watching right now, if you can get purpose, if you can commit 100% and do the science into giving you that real head start scientifically, then I think you're going to set yourself up for moving forwards.
Definitely.
So going back to your story, sorry, I completely butted in there.
Hey, not a problem, not at all.
I know something happened more recently with your mum. Are you happy to talk about that? That was this year, wasn't it? In March.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it was early March when my mum suffered a stroke. Luckily she's okay, or as good as she can be. But the most worrying thing as well was that she didn't even know she was having a stroke. Because all the adverts you see on TV of look out for these stroke symptoms, they're based on the symptoms that men experience. So symptoms of stroke in women are a lot less obvious than it is in men. So my mum thought that she had a food poisoning, out of all things. Instead of thinking she was having a stroke, I genuinely thought I just had a really bad food poisoning. So it took her a little while to get medical help, which meant that when she finally got admitted to hospital, the doctors found out that she potentially could have had more than one stroke. Just by looking at her vitals, or however it works, I'm not 100% sure, but she potentially had 2 minor strokes and one major stroke, which did affect my mum quite bad. She was in hospital for 4 months. So the worst thing was that my mum didn't want to see me for quite a few weeks, because she didn't want me to worry about her for whatever reasons. I think I know the reasons why, but she didn't want her issues to become my issues, which really upset me. And I did eventually manage to convince her to arrange a visit, so it would have been about 2 weeks after it happened. But another reason why I don't think Mum wanted me to see her was because she was in a wheelchair and she couldn't feed herself for a little while. So I did promise myself that when I was going to see her, I'm going to be, poker face, happy to see you, no crying. Let's not make it more difficult for my mum that already is. But as soon as I saw her in the distance, in her wheelchair, I just went, oh my God, that can't be my mum. That's surely not. Like, things like that don't happen. It happens to other people, of course it does, but that can't happen to my mum. It's, it can't happen. Whether I was being a little bit naive and thinking that, my mum was invincible. She clearly isn't, bless her heart. But seeing her like that, I just couldn't stop crying. I did my best not to cry, but I just said to Mum, I said, I'm really sorry, but I don't know how to deal with these emotions. And the more I was crying, the more she was like, you need to stop now. She's like, you need to stop. So, yeah, seeing her like that definitely gave me more of a boost to get to better health myself.
Right. I was just about to ask you. You're obviously like heartbroken at seeing your mum like that. But yeah, that's my next question was then how did that have an effect on you? Obviously, you're heartbroken at seeing your mum in that state, but did that affect you negatively? Did it affect you positively? Did you use that, like you just said, you have used it positively? So how did you then make that your fuel to kind of better yourself?
To be honest with you, because it's quite a big life event, I did think, will I turn to food for comfort? But at that point, I was already probably 8 weeks into so I started my health journey. I say I properly started it at the end of January this year. So I was probably 6-8 weeks into what I was doing and what I'm doing now. And because of all the work that I did put in to battle my binge eating disorder, at this point I thought, oh my God, please tell me I'm not going to go back to dealing with this by finding comfort in food. But I didn't. If anything, it gave me more of a kick to go, actually, you need to carry on what you're doing and you need to try even harder. You need to put in even more effort. So I'm the best version of me for me and for my mum, who will potentially need quite a lot of support in getting better. And I do think that the determination I have and continue to have, it gives my mum a bit of a drive to go, well, no, actually, she'll say, oh, how many steps did you do today? And I'll say 16,000. And she goes, Well, I've only done 6,000, but you got to start somewhere. So it's kind of little jokes like that, I think.
Mm.
And she said to me, she was visiting last week, and she said to me, "Do you ever sit down?" And I said to Mum, "Well, I do sit down now and again. You all got to rest." And she goes, "I just don't get up." She goes, "I don't understand where you get your energy from." Because she goes, "Yeah, I need to move more. Of course I do." And she goes, "I could never do what you're doing." And I went, "Never say never, Mum. One day you might be doing whatever it is you want to be doing. So never say never."
So she's looking up to you now as inspiration. She must be so proud of what you're doing as well.
She
And
is. She's my number one cheerleader.
it reminds me of Ross Edgley. I used him as an example in a talk the other day. He swam around the whole of the Great Britain in 157 days and broke the world record. But halfway along that swim, his dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he was going to quit. And in terms of that, it could be like us going back to binge food or alcohol, whatever it might be. We could just quit what we're doing. But his dad said to him, "Don't you dare quit what you're doing. I want you to complete your swim. I want you to be doing this." His dad actually needed him to complete it, and so he did. And it drove Ross Edgley on to make sure he completed this swim and make sure he broke that world record. He now had his dad, the heartbreak that he used for fuel to make him to push on. I had a similar approach when I was losing my dad. He was deteriorating with his muscles, and I thought to myself, do you know what? The weaker my dad gets, the stronger his son's going to get. It was my way of balancing the books. I didn't want motor neurone disease to take my dad's life and to take his son's life. And you've done the same. You've used that as fuel. You've used it as, you've built that momentum at the start of the year. I think that momentum's helped you, because when you then have faced this heartbreak with your mum's condition, that momentum that you've already taken, that action you've already taken, has then helped you to then continue. And I think that's a key for anybody watching or listening as well, is that you have to get prepared for when something does happen. So now's the time to take action, so that when something does happen that could completely derail your whole life and health and everything, you're actually already in a position, you've already built momentum, you've already built habits, you've already built consistency, that you're then able to deal with that much better than you would have done if you're in a complete rut.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Lina, is there any sort of tips that you can give someone right now if they are in a real struggle with food addiction, in terms or they want to lose weight and they don't know where to start? Any kind of tools they can use, or any advice you can give them as to what action to take?
So my personal experience of how I approached trying to get better and control my binge eating periods, I accidentally came across an audiobook on Spotify called Tap-In Solution for Weight Loss and Body Confidence. I wasn't, to start with, I was very skeptical. I thought, this just sounds like a load of woo-woo. I don't think this is going to work for me. But I started listening to it because I thought, even if it isn't something that would work for me, it's still interesting to hear maybe other point of view or different points of views, or maybe find a different method of dealing with things. Because as much as I do think meditation is great, I struggle with proper meditation where you have to sit still and disconnect from the real world, and I really struggle with it, whether it's because I'm quite hyper or for whatever reason. But the more I was listening to this Tap-In Solution book, the more I was thinking, it could work for me, because you're not sitting still and you're obviously tapping on your acupuncture points, and it could work. So the more I was listening to it, the more I thought, actually, why not give it a go? So that was late last year. I've started looking into and started actually doing the meditations myself. And it was all to do with food related issues. So there's different meditations you can choose from for whatever issues you're facing. But obviously for me it was mainly around food. And I remember the first tapping meditation I did that was meant to release your anxieties around food. First meditation I did, again, I cried like a baby afterwards and during it, because I can't even describe the feeling and the release I felt during it and afterwards. I was like, is this it? Is this all I needed? And I've spent all these years punishing my body. Is this all I needed? Just a different approach that sounds really wacky to most people, because people I've shared this with, they went, nah, wouldn't work for me. But it actually, I did it for 6 months religiously. Like I did these meditations every morning, every night for 6 months. And the difference it made to me and the way I view food now, I don't know if any other tool would have achieved the same result. And whilst I was meditating and doing the tapping meditations, I didn't really use any other methods. But once I got to the point where I felt, I could be doing something else, I then decided to give calorie counting one last go, because all the other attempts obviously failed. But it was different this time. My calorie tracking app wasn't my enemy. It wasn't something that will keep me from eating food or restricting myself. It was actually, let's find out how many calories I'm actually eating and why I am overweight, not let's drop to 1,200 calories and just be miserable. So I think the hard work that I put in with the meditations, I think that was such a breaking point in how I saw calorie tracking and how I saw exercise, because exercise for the past 20 years of my life has been a way to burn off calories that I would consume during my binges. And now calorie counting and exercise, and so my calorie intake is completely different from my exercise. So I'd never use exercise to earn my calories, so to speak. So I'm in a calorie deficit, and whatever activities I do, whether it's walking, weight training, running, that's all separate. I do that because it makes me feel good. I do that because that's how I want my body to be. I want my body to be active because it makes me feel good. And then obviously the calorie deficit, I'll just keep it separate. And I have a calorie deficit that is very realistic. And if I ever discuss my calorie deficit with people, they go, that's still a lot of calories. And I'm like, that's the point. You don't have to go to the lowest calories possible to achieve results. You don't have to. But I think if
isn't it?
And it's one mistake I did before with calorie tracking is that, when you have an option to, when the calorie tracking app suggests the calories that you should be on, I turned that off. I was like, you're not telling me how many calories I need. I know my body better than anyone. So I'll make a decision how many calories I'm eating. And obviously it did work, and it's still working, and I don't think I'd ever even consider going on such low calories that, where you see on all these diet plans and all the rest of it. It's not realistic. It's not sustainable.
Where can people find you and follow you, Lina?
So I'm on Instagram, as you said when you introduced me, Lina Gets Lina. I'm going to play on words there. Not, easy to remember.
Yeah. Well, I'd encourage anyone on social media then who's got Instagram to give you a follow, because you do produce some really good content. I love your carousels. You provide a lot of information and education around weight loss and food. So definitely go and follow Lina on Instagram. Lina Gets Lina. And if you were to give the listeners of the podcast one last piece of final golden advice, what would that be?
I think with any lifestyle changes, and everyone probably could think of some changes they'd like to implement in their life, but for me, I think the most important thing is to concentrate on what we can do rather than the things we can't. So the minute you start looking at your whatever it is, exercising, healthy eating, whatever it is, if you look at someone's plan and you go, I couldn't possibly go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week, well, don't. Go to the gym twice a week. Find a different way of moving your body. The only way we're going to stick to our lifestyle changes is if we find a way that it works for us. Because if it doesn't work for us, then it's always going to be a struggle. But if you implement changes and you create routines that are going to work with your life, whether it's work life, family life, whatever it could be, because we all have different commitments and different routines. But the minute you think of, yeah, I can do it and I want to do it, that's a game changer. Whatever lifestyle change you're trying to implement, just think of whatever it is you want to achieve. I can do it, I want to do it, and I will do it. Game changer.
Yeah, brilliant. And there's people I see that are stuck on specific programs that they're failing on time and time again, and they're getting stuck on this loop thinking, I have to do this. Don't do it. Come away from it and do something that you can do. It's so important, isn't it? And you see someone else, what they're doing, and it's great to take advice from these people. But I always say, there's 2 parts to taking advice. You have to be humble to receive advice, ask people what they're doing, and then you've got to put it into your own mind and think, right, can I use this into my own lifestyle, and maneuver it yourself. Trust what you think you should be doing, take that advice, put them together, and then does that work for you? And if it doesn't, dismiss the advice.
Absolutely.
It might not be for you. So yeah, brilliant. Lina, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Harry. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Been a really good chat. You've given so much advice, very emotional, very honest and heartfelt. So I really appreciate that. Really appreciate you expressing all that.
Harry. Thank you
Take
so
care,
much.
Lina. Appreciate it.
See you soon. Bye.
Well, just before you go, I want to say a massive thank you for watching this episode. And please subscribe to this channel, where we're going to be giving you more guest podcast episodes and advice and motivational content from myself, Harry Edward Bassant. And if you want to as well, you can head over to my social media, Facebook, Harry Edward Bassant, Instagram, Si5 Improvement, where I've got a free gift for you. I've got a free health reset challenge, which is going to challenge you over the course of 7 days to apply some healthy living tasks. And it's absolutely free to download right now. It's in the link on my profile bios. So you're more than welcome to download that as well. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much for watching, and all the best with your self-improvement journey.